Welcome. In this video, we're going to be covering the top 5 VR platforms, comparing their strengths and weaknesses, and overviewing a few of the basic VR terms so that you're confident in reading news articles and basically discussing VR. So let's cut this into two different types of VR. The mobile VR, which is lower power but portable, and the desktop VR, which has to connect to a powerful desktop PC. We'll start with the mobile platform. So the first one is the Google Cardboard. This is the vulgarizer, as it were, because the Google Cardboard is literally made of cardboard. And if you take a look, it's really, you can understand why it's only $20. The most expensive bit in it is this plastic Perspex lens, and obviously the most expensive bit is a phone which you have to put in. So it really depends on the price of your phone, whether you have a phone already or you're going to have to buy one for this, but most people will have an Android or iOS device. So this is a great start for this course. The Samsung Gear VR, on the other hand, is slightly higher up the market. You're going to need a Samsung device for this one, so beware of that. But the Gear VR has a nicer build quality. It's obviously all made out of plastic, but furthermore, it has built-in sensors which improve the quality of the VR. And on the side, you have some control inputs like this little trackpad, which allows you to have better interaction with the game and slightly more complex input logic. So that's a good second step for you. Now, honorary mention goes out to the Google Daydream project, which is not yet on its feet completely. So I can show you some early ideas of what it's going to look like. But bear in mind, this is not out on the market yet. So these are going to look very similar to the Samsung Gear VR, except you have a handheld controller which you can apparently wave around in the virtual environment. So this is going to look quite cool and be quite close to some of the desktop platforms, but in a mobile platform. Now, you can start developing now for this platform, but it does require rather high specs, and there's only one phone that currently supports the development kit, not even the full version of the full Daydream just yet. So these phones aren't yet on the market, nor is the product, so we can't say very much about it. And then finally, honorary mention to the HoloLens, which is ridiculously expensive at the moment, but the idea of the HoloLens is it's not really VR at all, but rather it is augmented reality, projecting holograms into your real reality. So this could be fun for games, but it's going to be a completely different paradigm to VR as it currently stands, where you are generating the entire world rather than just part of it. Now, let's get on to the desktop platforms. The Oculus Rift CV1, Consumer Version 1, is the poster child for VR in general. It is priced at around $600 and it has a fairly good resolution. If you haven't seen it yet, the Oculus Rift, Oculus Rift, that's the one I want, not some other river or something like that, looks like this, fairly straightforward, and it has controllers that look like this, which are currently not out on the market yet. We also have the PlayStation VR, which is technically a console platform because it requires the PlayStation, but I've put it in with the other desktop PSVR, and this looks pretty snazzy, but it's going to be running on lower power hardware and it is a bit cheaper, and as you can see, the resolution's not quite as good. Now, the real premium VR here is the HTC Vive at about $800. Let's have a look at what this looks like. HTC Vive. Now, the cool thing about the HTC Vive is it has these super neat controls. It's a bit ugly, but it does allow you to do something called room scale VR, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. And as you can see, the resolution is similar to the Rift. Now, honorary mention goes to the OS VR here. The OS VR is an open source project, OS VR. And as you can see, it looks a little bit rough and ready, but the cool thing about it is that it's got a pretty good resolution all round, and it's an open platform, so you can build your own, and the starting price is around $300, so it's really quite cheap to get started on a desktop platform. But unfortunately, you're going to have to be slightly more technical in order to use this, and you're not going to have consumers with OS VR. So if you're planning to release a game on stores, then this is not really the platform for you to go to, but it's kind of interesting. Now, one thing to beware of is that when we are talking about resolution, with a TV, these resolutions sound really big, but that's because we typically are looking at a 30-degree radius of vision. So this is the angle that the television takes up in our field of view. So the concentration of pixels is pretty good on a television. However, in VR, we're looking much more at something like 100-degree field of view, which means that you need much higher pixel densities to achieve the same sort of visual resolution. So let's take a look at this. The pixels per degree is the thing we want to know. So the cardboard, because there's such a range of resolutions, actually achieves a very good pixel per degree, and that's also helped by the fact that the field of view is quite low. Now, obviously a low field of view has other disadvantages, but in terms of pixels per degree and the pixel density, it's pretty good. Now, the Samsung Gear VR has also an incredibly good pixels per degree. This is again due to a low field of view coupled with a very high resolution. The Oculus Rift, on the other hand, has a much lower pixels per degree, but that's because of its greater field of view. And similar things are happening with the PlayStation VR and the HTC Vive. Now, how about these in terms of performance? So obviously, phone-based hardware is going to be not so great. The high-end PCs of the Oculus Rift and the Vive are going to achieve the best performance in-game, and the PlayStation falling somewhere in between because you can't quite achieve the same graphics card performance as on high-end PCs. Sickness on most of these is actually quite minimal, with the exception of the Samsung Gear VR. Now, the reason for this is the Samsung Gear VR is, in some senses, quite immersive, but also suffers from fairly low frame rate, so you can get some sickness from that low frame rate, whereas the Google Cardboard doesn't really have such immersion and kind of feels like you're looking through binoculars, so the sickness doesn't even have a chance to wear in. So the reason that these three are minimal compared to the Cardboard is quite different. These ones actually achieve immersion and manage to reduce sickness. Now, degrees of freedom, what do I mean by this? How much do you get to control how you look around? So the Google Cardboard and the Samsung Gear VR have 3 degrees of freedom. This means you can look up, down, left, right, and tilt your head. Basically, you can rotate your head on the spot. However, the desktop consoles also have 3 other degrees of freedom, which is that you can move your head forwards, backwards, left, right, up and down. So this feels much more immersive. You can literally lean over a parapet or look down at your shoes, whereas you can't achieve this on the mobile platforms. And how about interaction? Well, the Google Cardboard at most has 1 trigger button, so it's very limited. The Samsung Gear VR has a trackpad and optional controllers, so this is giving you some more things to play with. As we know, the Daydream is going to add more on top of the Cardboard's 1 button. The Oculus Rift at the moment comes with Xbox controllers, but in the future is going to have those handheld controllers that we saw in the pictures. The PlayStation VR has the PS Move controllers, which already exist and are on the market. You can see those quite clearly. And the HTC Vive has the awesome 2-handed controllers. Now, the cool thing about the Vive is that it's room scale VR. This means that you are literally walking around the room and walking around in your virtual environment. This allows cool gameplay like being able to duck and dodge bullets, which you can't really do with the PSVR or the Oculus Rift because you have to be seated and stay within the cone of the camera that is tracking your movements. Now, what about platforms? Google Cardboard, obviously you can develop on OS X or Windows. If that's particularly for Android, if you're using iOS, then you're going to need OS X. The marketplaces are the App Store and Google Play, respectively, for the different platforms. So that is fairly clear and straightforward. The Samsung Gear VR, on the other hand, is OS X and Windows again, because it's an Android platform. You can publish on Google Play, but you can also publish on Oculus Share, Oculus's own sharing platform. The Oculus Rift, again, is Windows development only now, and the platform is Windows only. So you can distribute this on the Steam Share or on Steam or Oculus Share, as you would with most games. So the PlayStation VR is a closed developer program. You need to sign up. Your platform is obviously only the PlayStation 4 and it's only distributed through the PlayStation Store. The HTC Vive, again, very much like the Oculus Rift, is Windows and Windows, except this time it's distributed through Steam because Steam is HTC's partner in all of this crime. Okay, so time for you to do a little challenge. I would like you to review the tables in the previous lectures. Now you can find the link to these lecture notes in the resources for this lecture. I'd like you to list your game development goals and share your choices in the discussion. So pause the video and have a go at this. Okay, welcome back. Now I'm just going to show you how you share in the lecture discussions, because you actually want to go to community.gamedev.tv, where you will find our forum. You can also follow the resources link. There's a link to the discussions for this lecture, and that's where you're going to want to go. But this is the community website, and what you can do is you can pop on in there, create a new discussion post, and share your choices in about the devices right there. So this has been your overview of the current state of VR, and let us know what you have decided.